Hello and welcome to FoundHER Voice podcast. I'm your host, Valerie. I am the founder and CEO of FoundHER Circle, where women entrepreneurs connect, empower, and thrive. I'm also a business coach and wellness advocate deeply passionate about helping women rise. I believe every woman has a story and a voice. No woman was created for silence. Yet many were taught to quiet themselves. This podcast is where that changes. I share my microphone with women who have built businesses and stepped boldly into their calling. When you share your story, you give another woman permission to believe she can too. Ready to amplify your voice? Join FoundHER Circle or explore opportunities via the link in the notes. This is more than a conversation, it's a movement. Welcome to FoundHER Voice podcast.
Hey everybody, we're back with FoundHER Voice podcast. I am your host, Valerie. Welcome back, ladies, to season 4. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I am so excited. If you're new here, I'm Valerie. I'm a business coach. I'm, of course, the host of FoundHER Voice podcast. I am the founder and CEO of FoundHER Circle, which is a women's organization for women entrepreneurs. I love everything about helping women entrepreneurs, okay? And I just finished my 3rd ebook. Woo! So see, that time off did some good, right? I did get to work a little bit, just a little bit. So let's catch up. Took off December, took off January. Of course, I got to take off December because, I want to do all the fun stuff with the kids, right? And then January hits and it's Sawyer's birthday. And then sis had to have dental surgery. And then it was my mom's birthday. And then mom got sick and she was in the hospital. And then it was Sawyer's dental surgery. And then mom got sick again and was back in the hospital. So, oh my God, ladies, January tried to put me through the ringer. It tried. But, of course, it didn't succeed because, Val, she's just too hard-headed and strong for anything to push her down, right? I may take a day or two, but then I'm right back at it, right? And you guys probably all think, oh my God, she's been silent. She's, not posting much on social media. Woo! Let me tell you, running back and forth to the hospital every day, it does something to you, right? And I say that because, my mom is in her first stage of dementia. So, she's not going to be able to tell you, what she can eat, what she can't eat, what she does at home, like her normal routine and all this stuff, right? And her first trip to the hospital, we went ahead and took her to Frankfurt. It was close to home, so I thought, it's going to be great, right? It's close to home. I won't have to travel back and forth. Well, let me tell you, it was not great. I mean, you're going to have good nurses and you're going to have bad nurses anywhere you go, right? Yes. So she was in there for 5 days. I specifically went through every medication, the dosages, her surgeries, told them that she has dementia, go into the whole complete list so they know everything. Everything is on file. Insurance, all of it, right? I even paid the copay when we went through the ER, did all the things. When she got admitted to her room, it was late that night, and that was a different story, like sitting in the ER and her going through the different, things that she was going through. I had to ask for them to run certain scans. I'm sorry, but I'm not a doctor, and I feel like if a patient comes in and they start doing certain things and, the vital signs are going up and she can't breathe and blah, 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 something has to be done right then and there, right? And they're just like, oh, okay. And you ask for a scan because she has dementia and you're just making sure, ruling things out. Oh, you want that scan? Okay, let me go see what I can do. Comes back a few minutes later. Okay, we'll get that scan. Ma'am, You should know to do that scan anyway. But anyway, moving on. So she gets up in her room late that night, and, I talk to the doctor that's there and go over everything, talk to the night nurse, go over everything again, tell her bye, tell her I'll see her tomorrow. They call. First thing, the next morning. We need to have your mother's insurance. Ma'am, the insurance is on file. Oh, well, can you just verify those numbers for me? Yes, let me do that. So I verify the numbers. Okay, well, it looks like that's correct then. Okay, have a great day. Blah, blah, blah. Get to the hospital later that evening. Checking on her. She's eating the bare minimum because that's what she does at home. And she doesn't even have her teeth. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, first of all, she has dentures. How do you think she's going to eat this food? Like, she's just over here gumming this stuff? So, I go and I get her dentures, give them to her, she puts them in, and she just starts, nitpicking at the food, whatever. Nurse comes in, I said, ma'am? She said, yeah. I said, did you know she had dentures? And she was like, no. The green cup is right here. It says over here on her board that she has dentures, that she has dementia. Okay, I'm gonna let that slide. So then, I visit with her, go home. The next day, they call. They call back. They want to know if my mother is usually confused. It seems like she must have maybe a little bit of confusion going on today. I about lost it. I said, who are you? And she goes, oh, I'm her daytime nurse. I said, I said, are you in her chart right now? And she said, yes, I am. I said, okay. I said, so you're going to tell me that looking at her chart, it says nowhere in there that she has dementia. And she's like, oh, that would explain why she has the confusion then, huh? Yeah, that's why. Like, what are we dealing with here? And then I was like, is there anything else? And she's like, no, I think that's all. And I said, oh, I have one more question. She said, yeah. I said, did my mom eat breakfast and lunch today? And she said, yeah, she did. I said, okay. I said, did she have her teeth? And she was like, yeah. I said, oh, okay, great. I'll be in later. Okay, bye. Get off the phone, go see her. Of course, her dentures are still in the cup, okay? I said, Mom, you eat breakfast? No, it wasn't no good. Mom, you eat lunch? Nope, that shit ain't no good either. I said, okay, dinner's coming. Okay, so they bring the dinner. She looks at it. I'm not eating that. I'm like, ma'am, you need to eat, okay? So give her dentures. Cut up some food. I was like, Mom, just eat a little bit, okay? Just eat a little bit. And I said, I'm going to go get you some protein shakes. And you love the peanut butter crackers, so I'm going to go get those too, and I'll be back. She's like, okay. So I go down to the nearest store, get a 6-pack or whatever it is of protein shakes, get her little peanut butter crackers, bring them back. And the nurse comes in there, and, they're switching out their shifts, and she was giving the night nurse, their little thing, updating them on the patient. That's what they was doing. So she just looked at me like, I don't even want to deal with you because I know who you are because I already talked to you on the phone. So then, go home. The next day, nurse calls. Or no, sorry, it wasn't the nurse. It was the pharmacy lady. She called. And she said, I just wanted to go over your mom's medications with you. And I'm like, okay, she's been in the hospital. This is the 3rd day now. Well, what do we need to go over? And she's like, well, I just want to make sure that she's taking all these medications at home. And I was like, okay, here we go. I said, let me read them off to you in the milligrams, and you just check them off as we go. She said, okay. So I list them all off, the milligrams. Everything comes out right. And then I said, hey, by the way, I said, are you like in her chart? And she said, yeah. And I said, does that chart show like if certain scans have been done yet or not? And she said, yeah. And I said, can you tell me if, what was they waiting on? They was waiting on some scan to be done. And I said, can you tell me if that's been done? And she said, yeah, it was done. And I said, okay. I said, so the cardiologist should have his notes in there, and the cardiologist should have came by to see her. And she said, yeah, he has his notes in there, and he came by at, and she said 12:30. I said, okay, this was 1 o'clock. And so I said, can you transfer me to the nurse that floor? She said, yeah. So she transferred me to the nurse. And I said, hello. I said, this is Loretta Root's daughter. I said, I was just checking to see if the cardiologist has been by today. And she said, no, I haven't seen him. I said, oh, okay. I said, could you get her chart and tell me if the results are back from her scan? And she goes, yeah, hold on. She gets in there. She goes, oh, they're not back. I said, oh, that's funny. She said, what's funny? And I said, but they are back. And she said, no, they're not. And I said, oh, but they are. And I said, and another thing is the cardiologist came by to see her at 12:30 today. And she was like, if the cardiologist came by, I would know when he came on this floor to see the patients. And I said, okay. I said, well, if you're in that chart should tell you that the scan is completed. The doctor would have put his notes in on it and signed off on it. And evidently she must have been scrolling or something. And she's like, well, I'm just not seeing that. And she goes, how would you know this? And I said, oh, because I just got off the phone with the pharmacist and she told me. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah. She told me the time that he was on the floor. She told me the time that he put the notes in because he read the scan. And she was like, hold on. Put me on hold. Came back maybe a couple minutes later and she was like, I found his notes. And she's like, I did not see him come on this floor. And I said, that's fine. You was probably busy. And she goes, yes, I've been very busy today. And I said, okay, well, that's acceptable. I said, can you go ahead and read me the results? And she was like, yes, hold on. She read the results. And I was like, okay, that's great. I said, I'll be in later to check on my mom. She said, okay. So I get there later. And I left a bag there with the protein shakes. Okay. I go in. Mom, did you eat breakfast? Nope. Mom, did you eat lunch? Nope. Mom, I'm going to give you your teeth because it's about dinner time, okay? I'm not eating that either. This food around here, I wouldn't even feed it to my dog. I said, okay. I said, well, let's see what they bring you. She said, okay. So she nitpicked at it. I fixed her the protein shake. The nurse comes in to give the night shift nurse their little daily thing, notes. And she just looks at me, and I look at her, and I look at that night shift nurse. I said, when you get done, I'm going to stay right here, and I would like to speak to you when you get done. And she just smiled real big. She's like, okay. She said, I'll be back here in just about maybe 15 minutes. And I said, that's fabulous. So when she came back, I told her everything that had happened that day. And I said, I told her everything that had happened about them not giving her teeth, them calling about the insurance, calling about the medication, the daytime nurse not knowing, about the cardiologist, the notes, all that stuff. And she was like, I am terribly sorry. And I was like, no, don't be sorry. I said, you're going to have bad nurses and good nurses everywhere you go. I said, but I just don't understand that if you're in someone's chart, how is that stuff not right there? And she said, it is. I said, so they just refuse to read it? And she said, I don't know. And I just laughed. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm giving my mom protein shakes. I said, because she's not eating the food very well. And she said, okay. I said, but when I call up here, the nurses say that she is eating. I said, now, Mom, yes, she is a little confused, but 9 times out of 10, she can tell me if she ate or not. And plus, when I come in, she tells me that she's hungry. If she's hungry, that means she has not ate. So she leaves the room, and, I'm just telling Mom back and forth, like, I just can't believe this. Like, this is ridiculous, right? And a little phlebotomist came in. She was like, I need to draw your blood. And she's like, okay, honey, And, I just continued talking. And she just looks at me and she said, I used to work at, and she said another hospital. And she said, I will tell you that I came here because it's closer to my house. She said, but the other hospital is way better. And I said, good to know, good to know. I said, because we're not coming back here if we don't have to. And she just laughed. So, Mom got sent home. She was home 2 weeks. And then next thing you know, her blood pressure drops so low. And I'm like, here it is, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? And she's sitting in here on the side of her bed and she's telling me, I'm not going to the doctor. And I said, we ain't going to the doctor. We're going to the ER. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. And she's like, well, just call the ambulance, Valerie. And I said, Mom, by the time the ambulance gets out here, I can have you in Lexington. And she's like, oh, it's close by. I said, absolutely it is. So, I throw her little tail feather in that car and we just take off flying. By the time we got to UK hospital, the nurses get her out. They check her vital signs. Her blood pressure is normal. I'm parking the car while they're getting her checked in. By the time I got in there, I said, did you guys check her vital signs yet? What is her blood pressure? Like, I was freaking out because it was like 91/32 or something, like crazy. And that nurse just starts laughing and she said, her blood pressure is perfectly fine. And I said, well, what was it? And she was like, it's like 130 something over, I think she said 60 something. And I said, your blood pressure would be fine too if you just got out of a vehicle that was driving 90 miles an hour. And she started laughing and she said, what? I said, I said, because that's my mama. And I didn't know what was about to happen, but I knew that I could drive to UK hospital and be here faster than the ambulance. So that's what I did. And she just laughed and she said, I love it. So, she stayed there 5 days. They got her medications worked out, took her off all the new medications that Frankfurt Hospital put her on because they increased, well, they didn't increase, they gave her 3 new heart pills. 3 new heart pills on top of the 2 that she was already taking. So, by her taking 5 heart pills, made her blood pressure really drop. Okay, so got all that straightened out. She's good. She's in there sleeping. She's getting up. She's nibbling on food, whatever. So, ladies, say a prayer for her because I don't know. Like, I can take anything, but this has been a roller coaster for me. And her not eating, I mean, I'm in there all the time, saying, all right, it's breakfast time. What do you want? And I'm reading her off a menu, of things that I will fix her for breakfast. And she's just like looking at me like, I'm not eating any of that. And I'm sitting here like, what do you want to eat? And she's like, I'm not hungry. I said, I didn't ask you if you was hungry. I asked you what you wanted to eat. And she just laughs at me anymore. And, it's funny because I have to do her like the kids, At this point, I just give her 2 options. You want this or you want this? She's like, I'm not hungry. I said, it doesn't matter. And we go through this every day. It doesn't matter if you're hungry. You're going to eat this or this, And she takes a couple bites and she's done. And then I'm back in the kitchen and I'm whipping up a protein chicken. Here we go. I got you some chocolate milk. I need you to drink this, right? So, ladies, if you are a caregiver or ever been a caregiver to a family member, my heart goes out to you. And I had a talk with my aunt, and she's like, Valerie, she's like, I quit work. Well, she retired early. And she took care of my grandma, her mom. And she said, I'm going to tell you that it is the best thing that you can do. And you're going to be so grateful that you took care of her versus putting her in a nursing home. And, I made myself a promise a long time ago. Like, I would never put my parents in a nursing home. Like, never. Like, I worked in one of those for 10 years, And it's not to say that the nurses and the CNAs and QMAs, aren't good, because they are. The problem is that they're understaffed, and a lot of those patients don't get the care that they should be getting for the amount that they pay a month, is how I always looked at it. I would always get in trouble because I would spend a little extra time on patients. They'd be like, Valerie, you got 15 patients to get up in an hour. Like, are you kidding me? Like, to get them completely ready? Like, I know how long it takes me to get ready. No, that does not work, right? So, it is what it is. So, ladies, I just want to tell you that I am excited about season 4. That has been Valerie's last 2 months. And then, of course, I finished those 3 ebooks. So now there's like a business strategy workbook. There is a podcast workbook. And there's a content creation workbook. And I just love it. I love it because I came out with a podcast workbook. And as soon as I put it out there, I had 5 women. I put it in my stories. I had 5 women contact me, and they was like, I need this right now. And I love it because it's just like, okay, here's my Venmo, here's the price. That Venmo money drops in that account, I email it to them. And I'm always like, if you have any questions or you need help with anything, come back to me. And I was like, I absolutely love doing the podcast. So, of course, 2 of my girls have already reached out, and one said, Valerie, I need you to be a co-host on my podcast. And that's going to be Deborah Marie, Brain Plasticity Podcast. So she's out of Louisville, Kentucky. She is a brain plasticity patient. So she needs help, just guiding her, keeping her on track, right? And she's going to bring in different guests and stuff. And she has a wonderful story. So, I've been shooting those behind the scenes clips when I'm not in the video with her. So that's fun because I love to get those clips because I'm always like, man, I wish somebody was here getting my behind the scenes clips, right? But it's fine. It's fine. And then my girl Lincoln. So she is a master stylist down in Lexington, and it's called Twistedly Bougie Hair. And, she is a master at platinum hair and extensions. I mean, she can do it all, right? But she has like the certifications in all these different extensions, and, she's always staying on top of all the colors and the best colors that come out, and telling you, that color brand isn't great, but this one's better, right? So I love that about her. And her podcast is going to be Twistedly Broken. So I love that. And it's, I think, Confessions of a Hairstylist is the rest of it. So hers will be starting next month in March. And she all I can say is she is one strong mama. She really is. The path that she has had to walk, I don't know. I don't know how she does it. And I know that when her podcast comes out, I'm going to share it because, Valerie will always tell you that it doesn't cost a thing to support another woman. And I truly believe that some of you are going to relate to the things that she's going to talk about. And, not everyone has experienced these types of things that she has, but there's probably a lot more women that has silenced their self, that has actually dealt with these things, had these things happen in their lives. So, shout out to you, Lincoln. I love you, girl. I love everything you're doing. And I know your podcast is going to be amazing. And she sent me some pictures today of her sitting there working on her workbook, just niching everything down, getting everything ready for it. So, ladies, if you want to start a podcast, let's have that conversation, okay? Because I'm here for you. And, everybody has a voice. Every woman has a story, right? So, you can either start a podcast and, tell your story, or you could be a guest on FoundHER Voice podcast. And, yes, I love women entrepreneurs to come on here and, talk about, why they started their business, the obstacles that they face of starting a business, and, all the things that go into running a business and it being successful, right? But, I love to have women on here that started a nonprofit, so they can tell me why they started that nonprofit. How are they helping their community? I had a call last week with a woman, and we're friends on Facebook, and never met her, never talked to her in my life, but she was like, I'm seeing your stuff, and she's like, I want to have a conversation with you. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Tell me when you're available. You guys know I always do late afternoons, evening appointments. So she gave me time. We jumped on a Zoom call, and I was like, all right, ask me whatever you need. I'm going to give you my view, right? I'm going to give you my opinion about things. I'm going to push you to go certain ways, and, connect. That is my biggest thing. Like, connect and make noise, right? Because people don't know unless they see you, hear about you, right? And it's your business, it's your nonprofit, it's maybe your book that you've just wrote. You have to get out there and you have to promote that, and you have to continue to promote it. You can't just promote it once and then wait a month or two and then throw another post out there. You can't talk to one person this month and only talk to one person next month. Honey. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not. You need to be out here passing out these flyers, these business cards, like everywhere you go. Like, pass that stuff out. Have it ready, right? Because the more people that sees it, they're going to start following you. They're going to start engaging with you, and then they can start supporting you, right? So that's what it's all about, And FoundHER Circle, if you don't know, is connect, empower, thrive, right? So you got to connect, and then you empower each other, and then you guys all thrive together. I love it. All right, ladies, I guess I've went on long enough, right? So I just want to tell you, get ready. Be on the watch every Wednesday at 7 a.m. A new episode will be dropping. And season 4 is going to run until the end of June. And then I will take July off. And then I'll start back up for season 5 in August, okay? And I will tell you that I have 2 more spots available for logos on my logo board. That's in the advertisements after this. So if any of you ladies would like a logo spot, please contact me, okay? And let's get your logo on there. Also, if you need anything, you know where to find me. If you haven't checked out the website, it's www.foundhercircle.com. You can go on there. You can become a member. I really haven't been pushing that still yet because I want to try to get my panelists together. So ladies, if you are looking to grow a women's organization, please reach out to me, okay? Because we really need an organization in this state that truly is about connecting, that is about empowering women, that we all want to thrive. We don't want to gatekeep over here. We want to help each other wherever we can and wherever you are at. Okay? So if that means you need support in your business, if you need support in your life, you need a prayer, whatever it may be, like this is what this group is for, right? And I love the women that I have met these past few months that have truly came into my life, and they are just warm-hearted women, and it's so hard to find. And when I have these conversations with these women, that's what they always say to me. They're like, Valerie, you are just so nice, and like you don't care to help. Do you know that's very hard to find nowadays? And I'm like, yes it is. And yes, I do know that. And that is why I'm trying to change the game. But I can't change it by myself, right? So I need other women to help me. It's not about competition here. You do not have to compete. I don't know why these women feel like they have to compete. Just like I had the talk with my hairdresser, Lincoln, the other night. She was like, she's like, I don't understand it because, hairstylists are the worst at wanting to compete. And she said, and let me tell you, there is more than enough hair to go around for all of us. She goes, I don't want to do all that hair. She said, give me, 6 or 7 clients in a day. And she said, I'm good, And I just don't understand why people want to take people's clients. Like, I just never get that, And I know that when I started FoundHER Circle, I was inviting women into the group, right? That was women entrepreneurs, because that's what that group is for. The page and the Instagram and the TikTok, that's for any woman, but that group is for those women entrepreneurs. And it's silent in there. Like, the women don't ask questions. They don't want to promote their businesses. They don't, if you put something out there, they don't engage in it. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But I remember that I did have a message from someone back last, like February, March, whatever. I invited her to the group. And her response was, I'm already in a women's organization group. I don't have time for 2. That's fine. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. And I understand that. I really do. But I also look at it this way. It only takes, I'm going to say, a couple minutes a week to go check in on a group. Check in, scroll, like, comment a few things, send your business, post out. I mean, less than 5 minutes a week. But if you don't want to share your business over here, that's perfectly fine, honey. I'm not going to twist your arm. That saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. There you go. So, that is that. All right? Get ready for the season, because it's going to be fun. All right? Fun, fun, fun. And if you didn't know, I did separate FoundHER Circle from FoundHER Voice this season. So you'll have to go to FoundHER Voice on Facebook. So it has its page now, Instagram, and TikTok. Okay? And then, of course, make sure you like, follow, subscribe. Drop me some comments, show me some love. That always helps me. It keeps me going, right? Because, it takes a lot to run a podcast. You have to take your time. You have to purchase all this equipment. And I said, don't let me forget about this new mic that I got. Ooh, I love it. And it's red. Girl. And then, all the editing software. And then the reels. And, oh, my Lord. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of money, right? So I'm trying to get monetized over here. I'm trying. But y'all gotta help me. You got to show me some love. You got to put this out here in the world for me too, you know? So, I love you all. Again, if you need me, come talk to me, message me, do whatever. If you need to email me, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, if you want those last two sponsorship places, email me at Valerie, VALLERIE, at FoundHERCircle.com. Okay? I'll see you guys next week. Lincoln's going to be on. We're going to talk about all the hair. It's going to be fabulous. All the hair. Okay? I'll see you guys then. Bye.